January 1944, northern France. Low cloud presses down on the fields, trapping smoke close to the ground. The hedgerows below are cut by frozen tracks of steel German Panzer columns edging forward. Engines idling, crews tense but confident. For years, armor has meant movement, momentum, control. Above them, barely visible through the gray, dark shapes, slide into formation. The sound comes first. Not bombs, not engines. A tearing, rising howl metal, ripping through air. British Typhoons drop to treetop height. The pilots have no altitude to spare, no time to circle. Flak erupts instantly, black bursts punching the sky around their wings. Tracers climb toward them like reaching hands. Then the rockets leave the rails. White streaks slash downward. The ground flashes. Earth, fire, and steel explode outward, not in one massive blast, but in a violent, rolling storm. Tanks halt. Vehicles scatter. Columns bunch together, trapped by their own weight and the narrow roads beneath them. In his cockpit, one pilot notices something unexpected. The armor isn't advancing anymore. It isn't maneuvering. It's frozen. And in that moment amid smoke, flak, and burning steel, British pilots begin to understand what they've become and what this weapon can truly do. To understand why that realization mattered, you have to rewind the war several years, back to a time when air power and armored warfare existed in parallel, but rarely intersected with precision. In 1940, the British Army learned a brutal lesson in France. German Panzer Divisions did not merely fight tanks against tanks, they fought time, speed, coordination. Armor moved forward while aircraft sealed the battlefield from above. Dive bombers shattered morale. Columns advanced under an umbrella of air superiority. The result was not just defeat, but disorientation. British planners came away convinced of one thing: tanks, when properly supported, decided wars on land. Yet Britain's own air doctrine evolved along a different path. The Royal Air Force entered the war focused on two primary missions: air defense and strategic bombing. Fighter Command fought for survival in the skies over Britain. Bomber Command looked deep into enemy territory. What happened on the ground, especially at the sharp end of armored combat, remained largely someone else's problem. Close air support existed mostly as theory. Early attempts to attack armor from the air were discouraging. Bombs required altitude, time, and accuracy, luxuries rarely available over fast-moving front lines. Strafing runs with machine guns or cannons could harass crews, but rarely destroyed tanks outright. Worse, flying low made pilots vulnerable. Anti-aircraft guns, even light ones, turned shallow dives into lethal gambles. By 1941 and 1942, the evidence seemed clear. Aircraft could disrupt, they could frighten. But tanks survived. German armored formations reinforced this belief. Panzers were designed to move, halt briefly, then move again. Crews trained to disperse under air attack and reform once danger passed. The armor itself, especially frontal plating, was assumed to be largely immune to anything short of direct artillery fire. That confidence spread beyond Germany. British ground commanders still thought in terms of tank versus tank engagements. Air power was valuable, but indirect. Useful for reconnaissance, helpful for interdiction behind the lines. Rarely decisive at the moment, armor clashed with armor. The problem wasn't margination. It was experience. No British aircraft had yet proven it could reliably kill tanks in numbers, at speed, under fire. Meanwhile, the war itself was changing. By late 1942 and into 1943, it became clear that any future return to continental Europe would face something Britain had not confronted before on this scale: dense, layered German armored defenses supported by mobile reserves. Panzer Divisions were no longer blunt instruments. They were fire brigades rushed to breaches, counter-attacking relentlessly, restoring lines that infantry alone could not hold. Stopping them quickly would be essential. Artillery could do it, but only if already in place. Tanks could do it, but only if available in time. Infantry could not. That left the air. British planners began asking harder questions. Not whether aircraft might help against armor, but whether they had to. Could speed replace mass? Could pilots, acting faster than ground units ever could, deny armored movement entirely? The idea was dangerous. Low-level attacks meant high losses. Precision meant training and discipline under fire. And most importantly, it meant trust. For the pilots, the Typhoon War was fought at a height where mistakes were final. They did not cruise above the battlefield. They entered it. Attacks began low, often below cloud, navigating by hedgerows, roads, and smoke plumes. At that altitude, the sky was crowded with danger. Light flak, heavy flak, small arms, fire. Every German column became a nest of guns the moment a typhoon appeared. Pilots had seconds to line up, fire, and escape. Training emphasized discipline, but fear was unavoidable. Rocket rails added drag, reducing agility. Once committed to a run, there was no easy way out. Brake too early, and the rockets scattered harmlessly. Old too long and the aircraft flew directly into concentrated fire. Many pilots later described a narrowing of perception during attacks. The world shrank to a sight ring, a moving line of vehicles, and the flash of tracers rising to meet them. Survival depended not on heroics, but precision and restraint. Yet something unexpected happened as experience grew. Pilots began noticing patterns. Columns reacted the same way every time. Vehicles bunched up. Crews abandoned tanks. Movement slowed even when rockets missed. The battlefield responded to the threat of rockets as much as the explosions themselves. Fear became a weapon. Previous air attacks relied on repeated passos. Bombs missed. Strafing damaged but rarely stopped armor. German doctrine was built around absorbing these strikes, dispersing briefly, then reforming. Rockets broke that rhythm. A Typhoon attack was not a single explosion, it was a sequence. 8 rockets left the rails in less than a second, impacting along a column's length. Even near misses overturned vehicles, cratered roads, and blocked escape routes. A single hit could immobilize a tank. Several hits could destroy it outright. More importantly, rockets denied space. Columns could no longer simply spread out. Roads were narrow. Fields were mined or impassable. Rockets turned movement corridors into kill zones. German commanders found themselves forced to halt formations not because tanks were destroyed, but because they could no longer move without attracting immediate attack. For the first time, air power did not just support ground operations, it controlled them. The rockets themselves were simple. Unguided, ballistic, no electronics, no corrections after launch. Accuracy depended entirely on pilot judgment and approach geometry. Critics focused on statistics. Studies later showed that direct hits on tanks were relatively rare, but that missed the point. War is not fought on spreadsheets. A rocket that landed beside a tank could break tracks, jam turrets, or stun crews. Explosions collapsed bridges and cratered roads. Smoke and debris obscured vision. Communication between vehicles broke down under attack, and above all, rockets delivered immediacy. Unlike artillery, they required no setup. Unlike tanks, they needed no roads. A pilot could respond to sightings within minutes. German armor, built for maneuver, suddenly faced an enemy that appeared without warning, struck with violence, and vanished before retaliation could organize. Technology did not have to be perfect. It had to be fast. As these three forces, human fear, tactical disruption, and technological speed, began June 1944. Normandy, the invasion has landed, but victory is nowhere near assured. The beaches are behind the Allies now. The real fight has moved inland, into a landscape that favors the defender. Narrow roads, thick hedgerows, limited visibility, perfect country for ambush and for armored German Panzer Divisions begin to move. They do not advance in grand waves. They move in pieces, Kampfgruppen slipping along back roads, columns forming just out of sight. Orders are clear. Strike fast. break the Allied bridgehead before it solidifies. From the air, British reconnaissance picks up the movement almost immediately. Typhoon squadrons are already on readiness. This is no longer experimental flying. Pilots know their roles. Controllers on the ground feed coordinates. The timing matters more than anything else. Catch the armor while it is moving, not once it has dug in. The first attacks come in mid. Typhoons appear low and fast, using cloud breaks and terrain masking to stay hidden until the last seconds. German columns react instinctively. Guns swing upward. Vehicles scatter, but the roads betray them. There is nowhere to go. Rockets launch in salvos. Explosions tear across the column's length. Vehicles at the front halt. Those behind crash into them or swerve into ditch. Smoke floods the road. Crews bail out, then freeze, unsure whether to run or stay. The second wave follows minutes later, attacking the same stretch of road now clogged with wreckage. For the pilots, something is different this time. They are not just hitting targets. They are shaping the entire flow of battle. Reports come in from other squadrons. Columns turning back. Units refusing to move without air cover that no longer exists. German counterattacks lose synchronization. What should have been coordinated thrusts become isolated probes, easily contained by Allied ground forces. Throughout the day, Typhoons keep flying. Losses occur. Flak claims aircraft. Some pilots do not return, but the effect compounds. Every halted column creates another bottleneck. Every delay magnifies Allied artillery fire. By evening, German armored units that should have been at the front are still miles away, hiding under trees or burning on roads. Pilots begin to realize the significance mid-mission. This is not harassment. This is paralysis. One attack no longer ends when the rockets hit. It continues in the aftermath in stalled engines, broken morale, and abandoned plans. The Germans are no longer choosing when and where to fight. The sky is choosing for them, and as reports flow back to command centers, maps filling with red markers, where armor has stalled, the full weight of what is happening becomes clear. This is the moment, not when a single tank is destroyed, but when an entire armored response fails to arrive. The turning point is not dramatic in isolation. No single explosion defines it. Instead, it emerges through absence, through silence on roads that should be alive with engines, through gaps where counterattacks were expected. British pilots feel it first, then controllers, then commanders. Armor. Once the As the days after D-Day unfold, the pattern repeats with increasing clarity. German armored units attempt to adapt. Movements are shifted to night. Columns break into smaller groups. Orders emphasize concealment over speed, but adaptation takes time, is exactly what the German command no longer has. Daylight belongs to the Typhoons. Pilots fly multiple sorties a day, often returning to the same roads, the same intersections, the same forest edges where armor has attempted to hide. Attacks are no longer reactive alone. They become anticipatory. Likely routes are struck before columns fully assemble. Bridges are cratered. Crossroads are turned into choke points. In cockpit after cockpit, pilots begin noticing the same thing. The ground is changing. Not physically, though. Wreckage piles up, but behaviorally. Vehicles stop moving at the first sign of aircraft. Crews abandon machines that could still fight. Entire formations choose concealment over advance, even when Allied troops are vulnerable. This is the realization hinted at in the title. British pilots understand that destruction is no longer the primary measure of success. Control is a rocket that forces a column to halt for an hour can be more valuable than one that destroys a tank. That hour allows infantry to dig in, artillery to range, logistics to catch up. The battle is won not by spectacular kills, but by stolen time. Commanders see it in the reports. Counterattacks fail to materialize. Timetables collapse. German reserves are committed piecemeal, arriving late and unsupported. The Panzer Divisions, once feared as decisive weapons, are reduced to reactive forces, always one step behind. The Germans understand it too. Captured documents and post-war accounts reveal mounting frustration. Armor commanders complain that daylight movement has become nearly impossible. Requests for fighter cover go unanswered. The sky belongs to the Allies, and the Typhoon has become its psychological impact deepens. Tank crews sleep during the day, awake at night, exhausted and tense. Engines are kept off to avoid detection, limiting readiness. Morale suffers not because tanks are obsolete, but because they are trapped between necessity and survival. For the British pilots, confidence grows, but it is a quiet confidence. They know the risks. Flak remains deadly, casualties continue, but the purpose of their danger is now undeniable. They are not flying blind. They are shaping outcomes. One squadron report after another emphasizes the same language. Enemy movement checked. Armor dispersed. Columns halted. The words repeat because the effect repeats. This is the turning point, not just of a battle, but of doctrine. Air power has crossed a threshold. It is no longer a supporting arm waiting for opportunities created by ground forces. It is an active barrowan that denies the enemy the ability to concentrate, maneuver, and strike. By the time Allied forces break out of Normandy, the lesson is already embedded. German armor still fights hard. Tanks still kill tanks. But the conditions that once allowed massed armored counterattack no longer exist. They have been removed from the equation by men flying at treetop height, firing unguided rockets with deadly timing. The realization spreads beyond the pilots, who first felt it. It reaches staff officers, planners, and future commanders. The battlefield has been rewritten, not by a single invention, but by a combination of speed, courage, and relentless pressure from above. And when the fighting moves east across France, toward Germany, the consequences of that realization will follow, shaping every arm and movement, every daylight decision, and every road chosen or avoided. The storm has passed its test. What remains now is to measure. When the smoke clears and the front moves on, the immediate question is obvious but misleading. How many tanks were destroyed? British analysts begin compiling figures almost at once. Pilot claims are compared against reconnaissance photos. Ground reports are checked against aircrew debris. The results are sobering. Direct rocket hits on tanks are fewer than wartime enthusiasm suggested. Some claims are inflated. Others are impossible to verify amid wreckage and abandoned vehicles. But the numbers miss the deeper truth. What Typhoons achieved cannot be measured solely in destroyed hulls. German armored losses include tanks knocked out by rockets, yes, but also vehicles abandoned in tech, immobilized by near misses, or deliberately destroyed by their own crews to avoid capture. Roads are found blocked by a single disabled vehicle, its presence halting an entire column for hours. Bridges are cratered not to kill armor, but to deny routes. The effect is cumulative. Every delay compounds another. German units arrive late, disorganized, and artillery meant to accompany armor is missing. Infantry rides into battle without tanks that were supposed to shield them. Counterattacks begin with strength, then stall before reaching their objectives. Allied ground commanders notice the difference immediately. Requests for air support shift in tone. Instead of asking for help once fighting begins, they request Typhoons before armor arrives. Air controllers prioritize movement corridors, road junctions, and assembly areas. The goal is no longer reactive destruction but preemptive paralysis. German command adapts, but adaptation has limits. Moving armor only at night slows operations drastically. Night marches exhaust crews and strain maintenance. Breakdowns increase. Coordination suffers. By day, tanks hide under trees, unable to respond to sudden breakthroughs. Initiative is lost not because German crews lack courage but because opportunity vanishes. Captured reports and post-war testimony reveal the frustration clearly. Panzer commanders complain that their formations are intact yet unusable. Armor exists but cannot be applied where and when it is needed. Air attack has turned strength into liability. This psychological damage outpaces physical destruction. The presence of Typhoons above the battlefield becomes a constant pressure. Even rumors of aircraft delay movement. A single engine sound halts convoys. Fear reshapes decisions long before rockets are fired. British losses are real. Typhoon squadrons pay a price for low-altitude dominance. Anti-aircraft fire claims aircraft regularly. Pilots are lost to flak, accidents, and mechanical failure. There is no illusion of invulnerability. Yet the cost-benefit balance favors the Allies. One aircraft lost may halt an armored column for an entire day. One sortie may delay a counterattack long enough for infantry to consolidate. Air power is no longer judged by survival alone, but by what its sacrifice prevents. By late summer 1944, the evidence is undeniable. German armor still exists. It still fights, but it no longer dictates the battlefield. Its movements are cautious, delayed, and predictable. The Typhoon has not replaced tanks. It has removed their freedom, and that consequence will ripple far beyond Normandy into how wars are planned, how ground forces move, and how commanders think about the sky above them.